The ballroom was nothing short of majestic. A towering ceiling adorned with gold trim loomed above guests who sparkled just as much as the crystal chandeliers hanging overhead. Music from a live string quartet floated through the air like a whisper of old money and silent judgment. Waiters in starched white shirts moved swiftly, offering caviar on silver trays and glasses of champagne so expensive you'd hesitate to drink it. This was the Manhattan Royal Hotel's annual Global Philanthropy Gala, a night where appearances mattered more than outcomes, and charity was more performance than principle. Danielle Rhodes stood at the edge of this glittering world, dressed in the modest black and white uniform of the waitstaff. A linen towel folded neatly over her forearm, and her curly hair tied back to regulation standards. She was invisible, not metaphorically, literally. People's eyes passed over her like she was air, like her only function was to keep their glasses full and their plates cleared. She'd long ago accepted this part of her job. She didn't expect thank yous, didn't look for acknowledgement. Her job was to disappear, and she'd mastered it. Tonight was supposed to be like any other. She clocked in early, checked in with catering, reviewed the menu, noted the dietary restrictions on the VIP seating chart, and rehearsed the tray routes so she could move efficiently through the ballroom without colliding with guests or spilling. A drop, the usual protocol, but something was off tonight. There was an uneasiness in the air, more whispers than usual, more glances toward the entrance, a low-grade tension humming just beneath the polished surface of laughter and champagne toasts. Security personnel, usually stationed discreetly by the exits, now stood more alert, scanning the crowd. Adjusting earpieces, she caught the Mater D fidgeting nervously at the grand staircase. Then the room quieted, not fully, but enough that you noticed it. People turned, one after the other, toward the entrance, and then he entered. Sheikh Omar Al-Fayez stepped into the room with the gravity of a monarch. His robe flowed behind him like liquid ivory, embroidered in gold thread so fine it shimmered under the chandelier light. A silk keffiyeh rested on his head, secured by a golden eagle. His face was carved with dignity, calm, unreadable but sharp. Flanking him were two aides in dark suits, and behind them a translator holding a tablet, who looked nervous and unsure. For a second, it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Some guests clapped hesitantly, others rose, unsure if they should bow or shake hands. A famous actress dropped her champagne glass. The clatter echoed louder than it should have. The sheik raised a hand. The room went silent. Then he spoke, not in English, not with a translator, in Arabic. His voice was deep, measured, commanding. The rhythm of his words was confident, like someone delivering a judgment, not a greeting. He wasn't smiling. His eyes scanned the room as he continued speaking, slowly and with emphasis. A handful of attendees chuckled awkwardly, assuming this was some cultural performance they didn't understand. Someone at the back asked, "Was this part of the program?" No one answered. Danielle didn't move at first. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear the blood rushing in her ears. She looked around and saw panic blooming on the faces of powerful people. Men and women who usually commanded attention now reduced to fidgeting silence under the weight of a language they didn't comprehend. Their power, their confidence, all slipping with every word the sheik spoke. She hadn't spoken Arabic aloud in years. Her grandmother had been her link to it, a proud woman who taught her the language through bedtime stories and Quranic recitations, who told her that knowing someone's language meant you could hear their soul. Danielle had never imagined that fluency tucked away in the corners of her memory would matter. Not here, not now, but it did. Her feet started moving before her mind caught up. The tray of flutes in her hands clinked slightly as she set it down on a side table. Her fingers were damp with nervous sweat, but she wiped them on her apron and stepped forward. Through the crowd of frozen donors and tight-lipped executives, Danielle walked toward the center of the room where Sheikh Omar stood still speaking, still met with blank stares. The translator behind him remained frozen, unsure if he should intervene. When Danielle stopped just a few feet in front of the sheik, the silence became suffocating. She cleared her throat, softly at first. Then louder. Asterisk, Your Excellency. She said in Arabic, her voice clear but respectful. I understand you, I heard everything. Asterisk, the room inhaled as one. Gasps rippled across the floor like a wave of disbelief. All eyes turned to the young black woman in the server's uniform. It was as if a ghost had spoken. Some guests squinted, certain they were imagining it. Others laughed nervously, assuming it was some elaborate act. But then Sheikh Omar paused, truly paused, for the first time since he'd entered. His eyes narrowed, focused solely on her. Surprise flickered in them. Then something else. Respect, asterisk, Danielle continued, this time switching into English for the rest of the crowd, asterisk. He says the donations made last year, funds meant for refugee children, were misused. He has documentation. He asked where the money went. He says the board's reports don't match the transfers his office tracked. Asterisk, a chill ran through the room. Phones lit up as board members exchanged panicked texts. The chairman stepped forward again, his voice strained. Miss, what are you doing? This isn't your place, asterisk. Danielle didn't flinch. With respect, sir, you had your place. He asked a question, and no one here could answer him. Asterisk, she turned back to Sheikh Omar, and, in Arabic, explained who she was, a catering staff member, fluent in Arabic thanks to her grandmother. She apologized for speaking out of turn, but said someone needed to be honest with him. Asterisk, he asked her another question in Arabic. Why did you step forward? This was not your problem, asterisk. Danielle's reply came instinctively. Because I know what it's like to be ignored when you're speaking the truth. Asterisk, something shifted in the Sheikh's expression. He nodded once. Then, calmly, he motioned to his aide, who retrieved a tablet and handed it to Danielle. On it were documents, bank transfers, fake invoices, proof of diverted funds, asterisk. She read through them, translating out loud for the room. Her voice never wavered, asterisk. These are the numbers. The foundation's administrative budget went from $1.2 million to over $6 million in 6 months. Jet rentals, gala planning, personal security. None of the allocated funds reached the refugee centers in Beirut or Aleppo. Asterisk, a woman in a glittering blue dress stood and blurted, That's not possible. I donated $250,000. Asterisk, Danielle turned to her calmly. Your money went to a PR campaign and 2 hotel suites booked under aliases. That's what the Sheikh uncovered. Asterisk, the room exploded into whispers, the quiet murmur of panic and self-preservation. But Sheikh Omar raised his hand again and silence returned. Asterisk, he looked at Danielle and said in Arabic, Will you speak for me? Asterisk, Danielle hesitated. She wasn't a translator. She wasn't part of this world. But looking into his eyes, she realized something. He wasn't just asking for words. He was asking for trust. She nodded. They walked together toward the center podium. Danielle stood beside him, the only voice capable of bridging the gap between power and truth. The Sheikh addressed the room again, this time letting Danielle interpret every word, sentence by sentence. He detailed how his team had spent months investigating the financial trail, how he had given this organization the benefit of the doubt, how he felt insulted not just personally, but on behalf of the children whose lives were reduced to marketing lines in an annual report. Asterisk, Danielle's voice stayed calm, strong, unwavering. She didn't stutter. She didn't shy away. She made eye contact with the very people who had ignored her all evening and repeated the words of the most powerful man in the room without flinching. Asterisk, and slowly, very slowly, the crowd began to understand this night wasn't about fundraising anymore. Asterisk, it was a reckoning. And the girl they hadn't noticed had become the one person they couldn't ignore. Asterisk, the chairman of the board stepped forward, trying to appear composed. Your Highness, he began, we're honored by your presence. Perhaps someone could, translate? Asterisk, but Sheikh Omar kept speaking, uninterrupted. He gestured slightly toward the front tables. His tone sharpened, his words grew heavier. Asterisk, Danielle froze. Her spine straightened. She understood every word. He was demanding answers, accusing the organizers of dishonesty, asking, Where is the money that was promised to the children? Why do your reports lie? Why has my trust been stolen? Danielle stood still, her tray trembling in her hands. Everyone else in the room looked lost, their smiles wilting under the pressure. Some stared blankly, others opened translation apps on their phones, but it was no use. The Wi-Fi was too slow, the signal too weak, the guilt too strong, and that's when Danielle realized no one else could understand him, and she was the only one who could. The podium was never meant for someone like her, at least not in the eyes of the people seated before her. Danielle could feel it, the confusion, the disbelief, the subtle contempt simmering just beneath the surface. Some guests fidgeted in their seats, others glanced toward the exits, calculating how much damage control they'd need to do by morning. But Danielle stood tall beside Sheikh Omar, her hands steady, her voice firm, as he spoke. She translated, word for word, phrase for phrase. But more than that, she carried the weight of his message with conviction. This wasn't a performance, it was a confrontation, one that demanded accountability. The Sheikh revealed how he had reached out privately to the foundation weeks ago, giving them a chance to explain the inconsistencies. They never responded. Instead, they had buried the issue and proceeded with the gala, hoping to dazzle their way past the truth. And now here they were exposed. The guests sat frozen, their faces stripped of the carefully curated expressions they'd worn all night. Phones buzzed silently on laps. A few people whispered, trying to spin excuses, but no one dared interrupt. The Sheikh turned to Danielle once more and asked her to read the names listed on the report: executives, advisors, partners, each one linked to the siphoning of funds. Danielle didn't flinch. She read every name aloud, her voice echoing off the marble walls. When she was done, the Sheikh said something quietly in Arabic that no one else heard. Danielle paused, then turned to the audience. Sheikh Omar has decided to pull every cent of his donation from this organization, effective immediately. But that's not all. He's creating a new foundation, one that will oversee aid directly with full transparency. And he's asked me to be the director of North American operations. The room erupted not in applause, but in stunned silence. You could hear the ice clink in someone's untouched glass. Danielle's throat tightened. She had not seen this coming. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I'm not qualified for something like that, she finally whispered to him. He replied in Arabic. You are qualified because you stood when no one else did, you understood when no one listened, and you spoke with truth when everyone else chose silence. That was the moment the power in the room shifted entirely. The board chairman's face drained of color. The donors whispered among themselves, unsure whether to congratulate her or start plotting their exits. An influencer at the back began live streaming, suddenly realizing the Maid everyone ignored had become the story the world would care about. By morning, Danielle took a step back from the microphone. Her hands were trembling now, not from fear, but from the realization that everything had changed. Not just for her, but for everyone who had ever been overlooked. For every voice dismissed as background noise. 2 weeks later, Danielle's face appeared on the covers of magazines and news channels. Interviews flooded in. The story was everywhere. Black Maid shocks billionaires at Gala. Invisible no more, the woman who spoke truth to power. From caterer to CEO, how? One voice changed a room. But Danielle remained grounded. In each interview, she credited her grandmother, her faith, and the truth. Sheikh Omar stayed true to his word. The new charity launched with a sweeping initiative that redirected millions to real refugee efforts. Danielle traveled to Lebanon within the first month, overseeing school reconstruction and medical aid. Back in New York, the old foundation collapsed under investigation. Donors pulled out, the board resigned. And the gala, once the highlight of New York's philanthropic calendar, was quietly canceled the following year. But for Danielle, the most meaningful moment came on a quiet afternoon, weeks after the storm had passed. She returned to the ballroom, not as staff, but as guest. She stood under the same chandeliers, dressed in a sleek navy dress. Her head held hideout asterisk, and as she looked around the empty room, she smiled, not because she'd made it, but because she'd spoken when it mattered, and the world had finally listened.